Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that while I've done my best to research the details of this case, I may mispronounce a name or two. If this happens, please know I mean no disrespect to the victims, their families, or anyone connected to this case. Some stories fade with time, but others linger, like the chill of Halloween night that never ends. In Brick Township, New Jersey, 1973, wasn't supposed to be remembered for tragedy. Kids filled the street with costumes and candy dreams, but one of them would never make it home. Tonight we're remembering Maria Teresa, a young girl full of warmth, love, and promise. Her disappearance turned a night of innocence into the darkest Halloween nights that New Jersey Shore has ever seen. Because when darkness falls, even the safe place can hide the most haunting secrets. The whispers began almost immediately. Neighbors asking questions, a community searching for answers. Tonight we look at why those whispers never truly faded. Halloween night in Jersey Shore town, friends out hanging on porches, the lights glowing, a crisp hum of Route 88 after dark. It was one of those October evenings that seemed to hold a kind of magic in the air. Laughter spilling out of the car windows, the scent of bonfires, kids dressed in costume racing from house to house with their little buckets. Brick Township, New Jersey, a quiet suburb in the shadow of the Atlantic, felt safe that night, ordinary, the kind of place where nothing truly terrible ever happens. But for a 17-year-old Maria, that night would hold some tragedy, a horror no one saw coming. Maria left her family's home about 6 that evening, planned to going out with friends, like any teenager would. Her parents watched her go, expecting to see her walk back in the door a few hours later, but she never came home. When midnight passed with no signs of her, her parents reported her missing. Panic had quickly set in. Maria wasn't that kind of girl just to run away or not call. Local officer even recalled seeing her that night walking on Route 88, about a half a mile from her house. She was all alone, calm, heading toward the town. He planned to loop back and offer her a ride home once he'd finished another call. 10 minutes later, he had drove back down the same stretch of road. She was gone. He assumed she had made it home safely. Tragically, the assumption would haunt him for the rest of his life. Maria was bright, spirited, and very responsible, the younger daughter of a close-knit Italian-American family who had built their lives in Brick Township. Her father worked long hours to provide for his family. Her mother was the kind who kept the house warm and the kitchen full. Everyone who knew Maria said the same thing. She had a presence that filled a room, with eyes that smiled even before her mouth did. She loved Halloween, the lights, the costumes, the way the night felt just a little freer. But that night, as the cold wind picked up along the highway, something or someone was waiting for her. In the days that followed her disappearance, the community came together. Flyers covered telephone poles. Friends searched the wooded areas and edges along the Route 88. Parents warned their daughters not to walk alone. For 2 years, her family held on to hope, the kind of desperate, aching hope that only grows heavier as time passes. Then, in January 1984, another discovery, one that would connect Maria's fate to one of the most disturbing killers New Jersey has ever seen. Ocean Township, it's about a half a mile from Brick, had always been known for beaches and boardwalks. Not its headlines, but behind Burger King, a gruesome scene awaited. Then, two kids playing in an abandoned park behind the Burger King parking lot. When playing in the partial land, there was the discovery of the body. It was decayed and basically only skeletal remains with some clothing. Officer Kevin Quinn was the first officer on scene, and to examine the body, she had been face down with her arms and feet were outstretched, and her hair had fallen around her skull. Officer Quinn moved her hair a little. He noticed she had a bullet hole in her forehead. As they picked her up to move her, the spent round inside her head cavity had fallen. The medical examiner had confirmed that she had been dead for several months and also shot several times in the head at close range. They did identify her as Anna Oswitz. The thread would lead investigators to a man named Richard Biegenwald. The cycle began. In 1980, Biegenwald meets a younger woman named Diane. He then marries her and moves to Asbury Park in New Jersey. Biegenwald wasn't new to violence. Born in 1940, his childhood was already a horror story. He was the kind of kid teachers whispered about, withdrawn, angry, unpredictable. By 5, he was setting fires. By 8, he was stealing. His father beat him regularly, and his mother was distant. By adolescence, he'd been institutionalized, receiving electroshock therapy that left scars no one could see. At 18, his violent impulses escalated to murder. In 1958, he and his friend robbed a grocery store and killed the owner, who happened to be an assistant prosecutor. It was a senseless act that shocked the community. He was sentenced to life in prison, but 17 years later, he was released on parole. He did move back with his mom on Staten Island. Biegenwald returned to Jersey Shore. He reconnected with an old prison acquaintance, Darren Fitzgerald. The two men became inseparable, a dangerous partnership fueled by control, power, and the thrill. Fitzgerald would later tell police how they first murdered together happened on Halloween night in 1981. The victim? Maria. He said Biegenwald spotted Maria walking down the road. They offered her a ride. She accepted, likely believing she'd been dropped off closer to home. Instead, she was driven to a secluded area. Fitzgerald claimed that within moments, Biegenwald pulled out the gun and shot her twice in the head. Afterwards, they took her body across the state lines to Staten Island, where Biegenwald buried her in his mother's backyard. Months later, Darren said another woman, Deborah Osborne, who had gone missing in April of 1982 after leaving a tavern in Point Pleasant, were buried right on top of Maria. Fitzgerald showed detectives where on the property they were, and when they finally got a search warrant, they went out to recover the bodies. They were right where Fitzgerald had said they were. Years later, detectives would uncover the truth of that backyard, shallow graves, skeletal remains, and a trail of victims that pointed back to one man who had already been given a second chance at freedom. Investigators searched Biegenwald's home in Asbury Park, found an arsenal, rifles, guns, handguns, silencers, explosives, even a cache of stolen goods and drugs. He lived a double life, a quiet neighbor by day, a predator by night. From what the detectives surmised is that Biegenwald had picked young women that remind him of his ex-girlfriend, Teresa Smith. the one who brought the downfall to Biegenwald. She had went to the police and had implicated him in the murder of Anna. When Biegenwald was finally caught, they were asking for the death penalty. He offered a plea deal that if he would give up 25 to 75 bodies, would they take the death penalty off the table. But that offer was turned down because they had enough of hard evidence to convict him. The story that unfolded was almost too horrific to believe. He described how they picked up women, often runaways or girls who trusted too easily. The murders were cold, methodical, and often followed the same pattern: abduction, assault, execution-style shooting. Or did rape them. Police discovered 5 confirmed victims linked directly to him. Maria Ciallella, 17, vanished on Halloween 1981. Deborah Osborne, 17, disappeared April 1982. William Ward, 34, a supposed friend, shot and buried after an argument. Anna Auschwitz, shot 4 times in the head, found behind Burger King. And there's Betsy Bacon, 17. She'd vanished on November 1982. Fitzgerald had said they buried her along an unused road. There were others suspected, many. The trial that followed would become one of the most publicized in New Jersey's history. Richard Biegenwald was convicted in 1987, sentenced first to death, then spared and given a life sentence instead. He would then die behind bars in 2008, unrepentant, a silence about the true number of lives he had stolen, never expressing remorse and never revealing a full extent of his crimes. In the end, he left his victims and families without peace or closure they have always prayed for all those years. For Maria's family, the confirmation brought no peace. After more than 2 years of searching, hoping, and praying, the realization that she was actually gone that entire time, buried beneath another young woman, was almost unbearable. Neighbors remembered Maria's laughter echoing down the blocks on warm evenings. Her teachers described her as kind, with a spark that drew people in. Her best friend once said, "She was a kind of person who made you feel safe, and that's what makes it so cruel." Brick Township still remembers her. On Halloween nights, some residents still leave an extra candle burning on their window, a quiet tribute to the girl who never came home. Even decades later, the case lingers in the collective memory of Jersey Shore. The idea of a serial killer had hidden among them, burying victims across the town they thought were safe, left a mark that never faded. Route 88 still hums with traffic, the lights of passing cars flickering like ghosts of the October night. Every Halloween, when the air cools and leaves scattered across the pavement, those who remember can't help but think of Maria and how quickly ordinary moments can turn to horror. Some tragedies fade with time, but others leave a shadow that lingers over families, over towns, and across decades, especially around the holidays when someone they love is taken from them, when the horror strikes on the very day meant for joy. Maria's story isn't just about crime. It's about a life stolen too soon, and a community that learned how fragile safety can be. Because when darkness falls, the truth does come out. Well, this is it for this case today, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Please stay safe. Time another case is calling. Bye for now.